Okay, hello everybody, and thank you once again for joining me for the placement diary. Again, I know I'm a little bit behind here, 3 days to be precise. I just kind of want to incorporate it all into the one video again because it just makes more sense from my point of view. I don't want to leave it any later than 3 days because then things start to go and get lost in translation, which is exactly what I'm trying to avoid with this series. So as you can tell by my floppity doppity hair here, it's been a very long day. It's been pretty hectic at the nursery just now, trying to get everything together. For me, I'm going on to my 2-week Easter break after this week. I've informed the nursery, just as a sort of personal aside, that I will be in Dundee for the first week of this holiday, so if any time they need me to come up and give them a hand, that I am available 24/7. Just because they're sort of doing me the favour by having me there, I think it's good to, offer that sort of assistance back to them. So we'll jump straight into the days here just in a second, once I put you in darkness just to see if I can get this to work. I noticed that in the engagement sort of with the comments here that both one of my course mates, Kirsty, thank you very much for watching first of all, had produced some had provided some input for me, which I thought was really nice. Thank you so much for that. And the other was from the program director, Peter Wakefield, so that was really interesting to see how sort of widespread these videos are going. Now, for whatever reason, I'm really struggling to get this working. Why is that? I can't see if that's working now, so not understanding. I'm still very new to this software, so this might not be able to work. Let me just try once more. See the windows. Okay, there we go. Now, I don't know why it didn't just work right away. So Peter's comment here, it says, I have dipped into most days of your diary, Ewan. It's really good, and it would be really great to record your experiences. Sorry, I can't read. It's very small on my screen. You're mainly recording what you've been doing and seeing. My advice would be to try and deepen the reflective aspect. Reflection is thinking deeply about things which we might not otherwise have thought about, and through that, learning more. What are you learning each day? Cheers. And Peter. So yeah, first of all, thank you so much for your constructive feedback there, Peter. I'll be sure to take that on board as per my reply down below, and we'll jump back into it. So here we are. Hello, I'm back. This is a new thing that I'll try and implement if I ever have pictures, etc. to share with you here. I can pop it up here in this sort of pseudo slideshow style video, which I like. Also, Kirsty pointed out that there's a toilet roll in the background there. Please ignore this, as my flat is very small. There's no room for it anywhere else. Okay, day 11. So day 11 is kind of when it clicked to me that the days are all going to start exactly the same. This is what I learned today, sort of going off what Peter said. There's always when I arrive, there becomes circle time, bang on 9 o'clock most days. We do the registration, we do the hello song, and then we do the day in the weather. And that also incorporates some form of discussion between the children. So that's really good. Gives them an idea of routine, which I've learned it sets them up for primary school, sets them up for, they're going to be there for a long day, they need to know to say goodbye to mum and dad. They have this routine in which they can stick to, they can rely on it almost. They know that this is fact, they know this is going to happen, so that it doesn't catch them by surprise. Not to say that every so often something a little bit different isn't good to, shake things up and keep it interesting, but it's good to have that continuous thing so the children can feel secure within the nursery. Like, they know what's going to happen, it's their domain. What I noticed that they do with the register, which is really interesting actually, is some days that they put the register in reverse. So I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I don't think I have. I think I have in the written version of my sort of reflections, my day-by-day reflections, but not so much in these videos. Basically, they will read the register in either a funny order or just back to front, so the children with surnames that are last in the alphabet will be first. This I like. It kind of keeps it interesting, because trying to keep children's attention, which I've learned through my own practices here within the nursery, it can be quite difficult to keep them, engaged, and a lot of the times they just want to talk, they just want to play, and they just want to, just interact with each other. So to keep it interesting, they change the names in the register like that, and it keeps them listening. It means that they have to really listen for the name. They don't just know, oh, I know that child name here is before me, so as soon as I hear their name I can just say mine and sit down. I don't really have to listen. It's good for that reason, I believe. Turn and talk. So this was Monday we're talking about here. Every Monday it kind of works the same as well. The children will turn and talk to each other as per their own request. They wanted to do that. To their partner about their weekend. I think this is really good as well. It keeps them, it sparks a flame sort of for discussion. It lets them discuss what's relevant to them. So I think one of the children were just talking about what they had done. I think one of the children's brothers, it was their birthday or something along those lines. Now that meant that his brother had a birthday party, and some of the children there were invited, so that they all kind of made their own little congregation group, and then they shared with everyone else what had happened at the party, what was there, and then sort of just one at a time though. And this encourages them to feed back to each other as well as to the practitioners, which gives us a sort of knowledge of how their language is progression. The irony in that statement alone. How their language is progressing. Because obviously the more that they feed back to us and feed back to other people, the more that they're getting the chance to practice tricky words, and the more they're getting the chance to be encouraged to use different words, if you understand what I mean. Some of the children I noticed were pretty shy, so I kind of wanted to observe from a sort of observer bias from an observer standpoint, to see how the practitioners dealt with this, because some of the children were very, very reluctant to share anything. They didn't like speaking in front of crowds, which, fair enough. I mean, there's many adults who also have this problem, but in order to deal with it, the way that they did this, one of the children kind of just sat with thumb hand like this and just sort of shook their head and like, do you want to share with the group? And then I think she didn't really reply at all. So the practitioner says, why don't you just tell us what you did at the weekend and how did it make you feel? So they were asking leading questions. Now, normally that's sort of discouraged when it comes to learning. You don't want to ask leading questions. You don't want to direct the children towards the answer as such. You kind of want them to work that out for themselves. But when it was to spark and promote discussion, then it made sense to me to use sort of leading questions, because even if it was just yes/no responses or one-word answers, they were still sharing with the group, which is a big step from not sharing at all, and it would encourage them to share in the future. But if children are kind of getting visibly upset, then the practitioner will say, why don't you come and tell me after circle time? So then they don't get out of it completely. They get out of sharing it with everyone, which is what's kind of scaring them, but then they come and tell the practitioner themselves. So they still share their experiences with the practitioner, but they don't have to share it with everyone else, if you know what I mean. So I think that's really good. It encourages everyone to take a turn, everyone to participate, even though some are very shy. Now, it kind of maybe looked at first glance like the child was put on the spot, but this obviously was not the case. So they had a backup plan, if you will. Something that I discovered happened this week are child consultations. Now this was a big thing for me to learn about, especially if I'm looking at the way that resource management is handled and the way that sort of language development maybe less so, but for that resource management aspect, I think this was quite a big learning point for myself. Basically, once every so often, I don't think there's really a set time for it, but just whenever interests develop, groups will have a child consultation with their group leader, or just with any practitioner. It can kind of be just off the cuff every now and again. What happens is the one practitioner will sit down with a group of children, or maybe all the children, dependent on the situation, and will ask them what is interesting them this week. So, for the past week or so, it's been growing and planting. Now that's set to continue for a while because it's really engaging the children, especially with spring coming up, etc. It's a really good time to be looking at that sort of thing. The way that this works is they will sit down and the children will be like, we're talking about growing and planting, because that was what they chose, that was the interest that was developed by them. So the practitioner will sit down and say, what activities do you think we could do to learn a little bit more about growing or planting? Now, I have to admit, at first I was very sceptical. because in the back of my mind I was kind of thinking to myself, what 4-year-old knows what they want to learn, sort of thing. I was quite biased against the whole thing, if I'm going to be 100% honest. But when I sat down and listened to the discussion that was happening, these children are really keen to learn about things, and what they were suggesting was really good. Occasionally they did need a little bit of a push from the practitioner, so it was pseudo-adult led to an extent, but it was mostly decided and put in place by the children. So growing and planting was the theme. Now the practitioner that I was observing at the time, I just put the question to them, what do you want to learn about? And then they were saying things like, well, Peppa Pig grows strawberries in her back garden. I don't know how factual that is. I've never watched Peppa Pig in my life, oddly enough, but apparently this was a thing. So the practitioner kind of jumped on that and says, would you like to grow strawberries in our back garden? To which they replied, yes. So, you know, the trip to B&Q was made and strawberry seeds were bought. Is that how strawberries are grown? I probably should know this, but let's just assume that that's what happens. So they're going to try and grow strawberries at some point. And another child was saying, I like the smell of the mint, and the mint plant that's grown in my mum's house, something along those lines. It's like, so why don't we try and grow some different smelling plants and sort of foodstuffs as well? And they were like, yeah, that'd be a good idea. So then she would ask, what would you think we should maybe grow? They didn't really know. So this is where the adult-led part came in. So the practitioner was like, well, what about we get rosemary? Why don't we get lavender? You know, things have very distinctive smells, so that when they grow, the children will know what these things smell like for the future. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was great that they were able to actively participate in the running of the classes that they were going to, well, not so much classes, the activities that they were going to carry out. Now, this worked really well with her group, because her group were all 4-year-olds, and most of them were on their way to school after the summer. What I did notice is that it doesn't work as well with the younger children. Now, this was something that I kind of considered, because the children are 2, some of them 3, very early 3 at that. They really don't know so much what they want to learn or what they want to achieve. So a lot of their learning is adult-led. Now, it has been led sort of to believe, someone is at my door right now. It's been led sort of to believe that that's maybe not a great idea for it to be adult-led, because the children should really have an active part in deciding what they want to do. So the way that the group manager deals with this, and the sort of younger group manager is the deputy manager, funnily enough, at this time, she will sort of post ideas to the children. So the other children have decided they want to do growing and planting, so she'll put the question forward, what would you like to do for growing and planting? And a lot of the times it's just, the replies you get are not really to do with growing and planting. They're like, I saw a plant at the weekend sort of thing, and there's not really a lot you can take from that. But then she'll kind of ask leading questions, again going back to this, saying, would you like to maybe grow some plants in the back garden? And then they were like, yes, this would be a good idea. And then she would ask, what kind of plants would you maybe like to grow? What plants do you like? And a lot of them really don't know very many plants, so it's kind of, she's encouraging them to take a role in their own learning, but at the same time she really needs to sort of do it herself. And that might be frowned upon in some cases, maybe, but I can completely understand why it is that she's doing this. She's encouraging them to take part in these activities, she's encouraging them to share her ideas, but at the same time, they are very young and they're really not too sure what it is they want to be doing. So that was something that I noticed. I thought I would sort of report back to that, and it's something that I learned that it's a hurdle, it's kind of an obstacle for them to overcome. During the consultation, we've already done that. Oh, another couple of things that came up was that they wanted to decorate pots for Mother's Day. They were kind of incorporating the fact that Mother's Day is on Sunday, they were aware of this fact. Growing and planting, they want to grow their mum a flower and they can decorate the pot. That was all their own ideas. That was the group of 4-year-olds, which was the group that I was working with later on in the afternoon. So I thought, great, that's fantastic news. They're all ready to go. They wanted stickers. So what kind of stickers they wanted? They're young children, you guessed it, One Direction, right up there. Also, one child wanted Captain America, and someone else wanted mustaches, which I thought was really bizarre. But then again, children are children. So to sort of assist with this activity, I told the practitioner, look, I will go and I will make these stickers for the children so that they can just kind of stick them on their pot. This was more of a sort of thing for me personally to build a relationship with the practitioner as well as with the children. You know, if they see, oh, Ewan's making these stickers, maybe Ewan's interested in what we're interested in, we can talk to them about it, encouraging them to open up to me a little bit more. Most of them are really good at doing that already, but there's still one or two that are a little bit shy around about me, but those barriers are definitely well on their way of being broken. 3 weeks in now, I'm almost part of the furniture. Okay, my activity was on Tuesday, never mind. During the latter part of group time, I observed the red group. They were using finger paints. This was interesting to see, but again, not really a lot to report. The activity was really well carried out by the group leader. She was very happy to explain to the children what was happening. And the way that she was kind of sharing her, I guess if you were going to say in the primary school, it was like sharing the learning intentions, is that she was telling them, she was asking them questions and saying, is this what you're going to do? To which they would reply, no. So it was like, we're going to do finger paints and we're going to paint here. Are we going to cover our whole sheet in handprints and paint? And they would be like, no. And then she would say, are we going to put all the paint all over the table and spill it everywhere? And we'd say, no. So this was kind of like enforcing rules, but to a point where the children still had free roam, and it was almost funny to them because they knew themselves that it was wrong. But I think a lot of them, if they weren't kind of sure of that, they would have just done it anyway because kids will be kids, sort of thing. So that was good to see. That was an interesting way of sort of approaching a negative point. So it's saying what not to do instead of saying instead of saying you are not going to and just kind of scolding them. It was like, are we going to do this? And it would be no or yes. So that was interesting practice, and I will probably pick that up and use that myself in my own practice because I think it was a really nice way of doing it. There was lunch then and story and quiet time, and to be honest, Monday was kind of a slow day. There wasn't a lot to do. A lot of my time was spent sort of just liaising with the staff, sort of planning my activity for tomorrow, which will for Tuesday, which we'll speak about in about 5 minutes time maybe. So a kind of a slow start to the week, but it was a really good start to the week. I feel like I was completely back into the swing of things. My patterns in terms of sleeping have completely fixed themselves. I'm going in there wide awake, I'm ready to go, I'm eager to learn, and I'm feeling 100% better, even with all the bug scares of last week. So, 17 minutes in and we're only on day 2. I'll have to maybe try and speed this up a little bit. Day 12, so yeah, Tuesday of this week. Everything just completely as normal. Arrive, circle, register, hello song. Some of the children shared the WOW vouchers that they got from home. I thought this was really good. It gets the parents involved with the children's experience in nurseries. Well, I think one of the children got a WOW voucher for using the toilet. So it's, just basic things. Basic things to us, but to children are probably a really big deal. I thought that was really interesting. I made another observation. Child R, which we will call him, was at Blair Drummond Safari Park at the weekend. At first I would kind of just gloss over this and say, okay, a child was at the safari park, that's great. But this child is very young, and he had learned a lot of new words from the safari park, so I thought, language development, I will just batter in around this. The practitioners were really good at getting this information out of him without sort of asking any leading questions. They were just like, so what animals did you see? And he's like, I saw a giraffe, and I saw a lion maybe, I'm not really too sure, but the one that really caught my interest the best was I saw a rhinoceros, not a rhino, a rhinoceros, so there was obviously, it was a very language rich environment, and it was interesting to see how simple things like that can really encourage language to develop. As just wee trips like that to the safari park. He's learned some new vocabulary, he's got some new words under his belt, and he'll be able to know this for the future. Free play happened. I made another observation about child L. I thought I should maybe clear this up. Whenever I say that I've made an observation or mention a child of any kind, I have a sort of individual file on each child that I mention. not for any positive or negative thing, it's just because I went into this placement wanting to do the resource management and the language development, which has been fine and it's been understandable, but it's not really very in-depth. And as the time is going on, I'm starting to kind of mesh with the staff and become almost part of the staff body, and not in a negative way. I'm getting the full experience of what it takes to work in one of these private nurseries, and that's fantastic. That's really what I want to get out of this placement. I want to understand the managerial aspects and the resource management and the development of language, especially in younger children. But as time goes on, I'm learning so much. I think it would be a complete waste to solely focus on these two or three things and just let everything else slide. That wouldn't be good practice in my opinion. So I've kind of broadened my expectations, and I've been sort of covering a lot more, like sort of behaviour management and just sort of mannerisms of the children, egotistical behaviours and how that's kind of fallen away. But at the same time, I'm looking at the children who have the foreign languages as their first language and how well their English is coming on. So I'm kind of taking a look at everything. So I just thought I'd clear that up firstly before I mention these files. Basically, for the children that I have particular interest in, that are showing particular signs of maybe poor behaviour or really good behaviour or struggling with language, I have a file on each of these. I think there's maybe only 4 or 5. No names are used, no parents' names are used, nothing like that is referred to, and there's nothing overly negative in there. All that I'm really looking at is, in terms of behaviour, is what sort of behavioural traits that the children are showing and how the nursery is dealing with that. So for example, one child O, in my folder I have that he's having trouble using the toilet. He used to be really good at it, but now he's kind of regressing and he's often wetting himself. So the way that the nursery combat this is that they give him a sort of a reward thing. This is something they're piloting just now. So he goes 3 days without it, he gets a WOW voucher. He goes 5 days without it, he could think he gets another WOW voucher. If he goes a week, which is either today or tomorrow, I believe is his week without being wet, he I think he gets like another WOW voucher, but it's wrapped up in a fancy present and there's a sweetie in it. This has been agreed with his mum and dad. So just things like that. I just want to see how the nursery deals with the way in which children are rewarded and disciplined. That's all it is. It's nothing sinister. It's nothing. It's not. I'm not critiquing parents or anything like that. Nothing negative in that sense. But I just want to look at the ways in which things are dealt with. Okay, I think I've rambled enough now. The observation I made, I've lost now. Yeah, child L was still showing sort of a self-centeredness. He has a real trouble with sharing. I think I come back to that in today's reflection. That's something that is becoming a kind of a recurring theme. Now I'm wondering if this is the sort of thing maybe he's allowed to get away with at home, and maybe he's not. Maybe his parents are not allowing that at home. Maybe he thinks at nursery it's okay to act like that. And I'm just looking at the ways in which the nursery are dealing with this. A lot of it involves, just regular sanctions if it's really bad. If he's doing something horrible, he has a timeout, he'll go and sit in the corner and he has to wait there. Just excluding him from the activities, excluding him from the group. But it might have to come to a point where there's maybe more than that being done. But again, it might just be teething problems. He might just be getting used to the nursery environment again. We shall see how that progresses. I'll be sure to keep you posted. The magnets are back on the scene, is what I've written here. The magnetic polydrawn resource, which I will have a full page of again in my folder. That resource is was kind of gone for a while. We took it away because there wasn't enough, but the children really wanted it back, so we were like, who are we to keep it from the children? We took it back, and they've kind of learned from that. Now, I don't want to sort of talk about myself too much here, but during last week they had a real problem sharing. Child L again had problems sharing with everyone, so I thought that I would just put it away. I just took it off them. I says, no, you can't learn to share. You've been asked. I had asked the child several times by this point to stop it. Children were crying at the station. I thought, no, I'm just going to put an end to this. I put everything away, put it away, and then it wasn't seen again until Monday. And when it came back out, it seems like they are it's not as severe as it used to be in terms of sharing. They are learning to share this resource, which is really good. So that's for me an example of a negative sanction that has had a positive outcome. They've learned that if they don't share it, it does go away. And if I'm looking, they have to share it or it will go away because they've seen me do it before. That's good. That's a sort of mutual respect that I would expect from primary school children. To see it in the nursery children is really good as well. So it shows that they're learning from past mistakes. Where are we here? Children still have a little bit of issue sharing them. Yeah, I'll put that as well. Okay. The problems that I found with that were that some of them are making models with them and then not breaking them up, so that's what kind of contributes to them being kind of short of them. But again, I've explained that to the children. They do seem to have made a major improvement, but they still have a little bit of issue sharing, so we'll try and iron that out. Okie dokie. Sometimes help each other, few and far between. Oh no, what am I writing here? I'm struggling to understand my own notes, apologies, just give me a second. Okay, never mind. So child L2 was having real issues with behaviour, and child L2 is another child who I have as a sort of a file. She's a very interesting sort of child case. A lot of our problems are stemming from, I think there was a loss in the family perhaps, so there was something along those lines, so she's began to sort of act out in nursery. It's been a bit of a shame. She's a really lovely girl and she can be really nice and she's really quite smart for her age. She can write her name already, but she can write her name really well, If we're looking at early mark making, a lot of the children are getting their name written, but not to all in the same line, it's like all up and down. This child has her name written in a line to a T with kisses underneath. So she's really quite talented in that respect, and she's really good at drawing. She's she's pretty advanced, I'd say, for her age, and she's completely ready for school. But there seems to be a bit of an issue for behaviour. Now, a lot of that will be covered in my folder, so you can refer to that for more in depth, but I think there's maybe been a little bit of issue just sort of settling back into nursery. She had a lot of time off because she had been unwell and there had been a death in the family, so I thought it would be maybe worth comment on that in here. But if you want to see more, I don't really feel very comfortable talking about the whole thing again to the camera. It's probably better just to have a look at the child file, because I don't want to sound overly negative towards the child, overtly negative towards the child, because she is a very lovely child. Okay, during group time, the first part of group time before I took my activity, they were growing sunflowers for Mother's Day. So they had made their pots yesterday and today they were growing the sunflowers in them. Really great things going on there. In terms of language sort of being developed, they were using a lot of words to describe growing. So it's like it's going to sprout would be the first thing that comes out. It sprouts out the ground, all things like that. And then they were describing the steps of what happens. So what do you need? It's like you need sunlight. What else do you need? Do you need water? Do you need compost? Compost was the new word I think they learned from it. So that was really good. Again, just expanding on the vocabulary. Really good practice going on there. There was a huge discussion before the actual planting took place, because at the end of the day, the actual activity of planting, the group time lasts for half an hour. Actually just planting the seed and pouring water would maybe have taken 5 minutes at a push. So for a lot of the rest of the time, they were just having a huge discussion about different plants, what they had seen, how they thought plants might grow, what do you think maybe plants, what food would be able to grow under the same conditions, things like that. Some really top-notch discussion happening there, and it was nice to hear the children all getting along and all, sharing their ideas with the practitioner, who was completely in control of the whole thing. It was brilliant. It was really, really encouraging to see these children do have this really innate willingness to learn about this. And again, I think that's mostly down to the fact that they chose to look at growing and planting. So they are really interested in this topic. So it makes sense that they would be willing to learn about it, and then you can kind of sneak other things in there, like the language development, like maths. You can maybe see how much it's growing, show the increments on maybe not a ruler, it's a bit early for that, but just measuring every time. So very good. Let's see. After a huge discussion, we have lunch, story and quiet time, outside play. Again, nothing major to report here really, just kind of helped out with everyone. And then it was group time for my activity. Now my activity was to keep in theme with springtime and spring animals and growing and planting sort of thing. I had an activity for sticking the wool on sheep. I came up with this one myself. I was quite chuffed, I'm not going to lie. Basically I took a picture of a sheep from Google Images, and then I removed the wool from it with Microsoft Paint. I printed off the one with the wool and I printed off the ones without the wool, and I was like, so boys and girls, I put it down in front of them. And I says, what do you notice is the difference here? What is missing? And then someone said the body. I was like, yeah, it is the body, but what's on a sheep's body? And then someone else said the wool. So I was like, good, that was a smashing start. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. And they were like, yeah, that's right. So I was asking them, so what do you think wool can be used for? And they were like, cotton wool. I was like, yeah, so that's the thing. They're identifying that sheep's wool is used in different, materials and processes. So I was like, what else do you think can be made of wool? They didn't really get this one right away. I think I had to explain it to them. I was like, so wool can be used in clothes. And they were like, how? It's like, so you can get a big woolly jumper and things. And again, it was good to know. And I was talking in terms of growing. I was like, so when you cut off a sheep's wool, what do you think will happen? One of the children was like, it'll grow back. And so it's like our hair sort of thing. I was just making the links there. So that discussion lasted for a little while, and then the insanity ensued, we'll say. I say that, it wasn't a bad activity at all. I think it went really well overall. So what I got them to do was, I got cotton balls, and I got all the primary colours of paint and green, just so that there was a little bit of variety. And then I put PVA glue in the middle as well. I gave them each a sheet, and I said, what I want you to do is I want you to stick the wool into the glue and then stick it on your sheet. They all understood. I showed them with an example. And then I said, if you want to, now you don't have to, but if you want to, you can dip the wool in the paint first, dip it into the glue, and then stick it on the sheet. Again, I showed an example. This was fine. They all seemed to understand. Great. I sent them off for their activity, and then they began to do it. So I was like, great, this is going really well. I'm very happy with this. They're showing a keen interest in what's going on, and they seem to be engaged. And then things kind of took a bit of a turn, not for the worst, I would say. Overall, like I say, it turned out really well, but at first it was kind of a little bit shaky, shall we say. The children all glued their pictures on. That was great. I was happy with that. They glued all of the wool on. Then some of them were like, oh, but I wanted to colour mine. I was like, well, maybe you should have done that first, but what you can do, sort of just thinking on the spot, I was like, you can put your fingers into the paint, and then you can rub the wool, because then the colour will come off you understand where I'm going with this. Originally, fine. We ended up with some really good pictures, but then they realised, oh, colours can mix and we are children and we like to make mess. Oh. That's all I can say about that. They kind of got a little bit wild, but then I reined it in. I was like, no, we can't be going over the top here, you need to calm down, we're not outside using inside voice. It's just all of the sort of techniques that I've picked up from the practitioners themselves. But what started happening was, they started to mix the colours. And at first I was like, oh my god, this is a colossal mess, this is not what they were originally meant to be doing. But then it kind of sparked with me. One of the children says, oh look, I've made purple. Another child was like, oh look, I've made green. And I was like, when God gives you lemons, you know what I mean? I was like, this wasn't really what was the original learning intentions, but I thought, well, fair enough. They're learning how to mix colours. So I was like, what colours did you use today? I was like, they were using red and blue, and they were adding a bit of yellow, and they were making purple, and they were making green, and things like that. And I was like, you know what, this has turned out really well. They've learned what I wanted them to learn originally. They finished it quite quickly, albeit. But then they were mixing colours together, and they were making they were making orange and stuff, and they had a great time. They got completely head to toe almost covered in paint. But again, it was only paint, just wiped off. It took a while to clean up, I must admit, but that was just a minor thing, and they loved it, and they got something extra out of it as well. So what I want to show you is this some of the pictures from that. Now let's see if I can do this. Window capture. Photo viewer. Okay. Aha! Brilliant. So this is what one of the children ended up with. This was probably the best one. This was the pièce de résistance, shall we say. As you can see, up at the tail here, I've taken away the wool. So they've stuck the wool in, that's fine, and then they said, can I paint the sheep's face? And I was like, well, you know what, why not? But as you can see, they've mixed together some of the yellow and the orange here, and they've made the yellow and the red, sorry, and they've made orange here a couple of times, and they've just made lots of different colours, and they started experimenting down the bottom. I'm fine with that. I thought that was great. This was a great finished product, and I got a good picture of it. One of the practitioners did say it looks like the sheep has been shot, and I would not be inclined to disagree, but that's neither here nor there. This is what one of the children done. Now, I know what you're probably thinking about this one, but I'll go on to explain. This area here was, he originally decided that he wanted to paint the sheep first. Now, I was okay with that. I was like, you know what, that's fine, just keep the sheep free. And he did keep the sheep free. And then he stuck down all the wool onto the sheep and it looked fine. And then I was away to take a picture, and he had already said, can I just stick some more things on, and can I just use some more colours? And I thought, well, I'm not going to say no to that. I'll just let him continue, because he's obviously learning some new things here. Look at some of the colours he's made here. He's got like sort of a purple going on here, he's got some orange going on here, and he's been able to experiment with colours. He's even managed to do it with this one ball here. You know, there's a yellow layer at the bottom, and then he's mixed it with the two colours. I'm fine with that. Originally it did look like the sheep, originally it did look exactly how it wanted to look, but then he kind of went a bit overboard before I could take the picture. That's fine. This next one, again, a similar situation. They wanted the sheep to have green hair and green wool. They managed that for the most part, and then once they had finished, they just decided that they wanted to colour in the bottom of the sheep to mix some colours, and they made a sort of aqua blue colour here, which I thought was really impressive. I was like, you know, again, that's fine. They're learning how colours meld, and that's completely okay with me. And that's the last one. So there was another sheet there which I didn't take a picture of, just because it was really wet. It didn't really resemble anything anymore, but that was fine. I only had a couple of sheets to take a picture of, and that was just the select few. Overall activity, success for me. But I also learned that children are quite unpredictable. We're talking about, in coherence with what Peter said, what did I learn from this activity? Children are unpredictable. They'll find different things to do, and they'll find a way to do it. And yes, I could have taken this a different way. I could have sanctioned the children. I guess maybe in olden sort of times that would have been the thing to do. No, that's not what I've told you to do. That's not what we're doing. Stop doing that. Don't mix those colours. That's not what we're doing, sort of thing. But if the children are going to be at the centre of the learning, and they're taking an initiative to do that themselves, they want to mix the colours, who am I to stop that? They wanted to do that. They've learned about mixing colours. They know what colours make certain colours now when you mix the primary colours together, and green as well. Fair enough. I was fine with that, and I think overall it was a bit of a success. What I would have done differently, maybe a little bit less paint. I think there was a bit too much paint, and that's why a lot of them still weren't dry today. But there you go. Free play happened after that. I spent a lot of that just, again, liaising with the staff, liaising with the children, and that was the end of that. Day over, pretty much. Which leads me to today, only 38 minutes in, hooray. Day 13, starts as usual, arrive, circle, Reggie, hello song. Now, before I carry on, I remember in the last sort of episode, if you want to call it that, we're going to go all American box set on this. In the last episode I was mentioning about the resources, the Disney resources. Now, I still wish to carry this out, but I'm going to postpone it for a while. The reason I'm postponing it just now is because there's a big drive for this whole growing and planting thing. The children are really into that just now. I don't want to take them away from that too much. And I also don't want to sort of confuse them by introducing these different aspects right away. What I will do is when I come back from the 2-week holiday, I will that will probably be the first thing I do when I come back. I'll bring those sheets back with me, and I'll be able to present them to them. I just think that because we're doing so well with this whole growing and planting thing, I don't want to confuse the children right now. And that's maybe not giving them enough credit, some would maybe argue, but I think it would make a lot more sense to see this week out the way that I've intended and the way that it's kind of evolved. getting things ready for Mother's Day, getting things ready for, you know, growing and planting, getting things ready for spring. Probably more about that just now. And once we come back, I'll be able to do that. Okay, my throat is getting a bit sore. I'm going to take a quick drink here while we wait. Arrive, register, hello song, the usual. I'm aware that was probably very attractive. Another observation was made on Child L during circle time. I feel like a broken record here, but I felt this was important. It seems like it appears that he's got no sort of sense of inner monologue. And what I mean by that is he doesn't think before he speaks. It's something that I've noticed quite a lot. He thinks out loud to everyone all of the time. He was asked to share something that he was excited about, and the story was just, I honestly wish I had written the whole story down. It was so bizarre, you know. It was just completely off topic. It was nothing to do with what we were talking about. He was asked how he was feeling, and he just gave this massive story. But when he was thinking of new topics, he was going, I went to the supermarket, and then it was just repetition of words, and then it was like he was. You could see the gears turning in his head. You know, you could understand that he was thinking of new things to say. Just because he wanted to hear his own voice, as horrible as that sounds, he just wanted to speak. He just wanted attention. He wanted to be noticed. But the only way that he could do that and keep a coherent sentence going was to continue saying I think he thinks if he stops talking, the practitioners will butt in, and then he has to stop talking. I think that's how that works. So that was an observation I made, and I thought that was really interesting to see. You know, just the way, the sort of method that he has to continuously talk, you know. And when eventually his story sort of ended, and then one of the practitioners was just like, can I stop you there? And then he stopped, and he was like, she said, how are you feeling? He's like, I'm excited, and then sat down. So, I don't know, it's very hard to decide what the sort of thinking behind that is, but like I say, I think it is just an attention thing. I think he just wants to be the centre of attention right now, because maybe he's an only child. That's something I'd have to look into again. But yeah, that was a really interesting observation I think it made today. One child brought in a newspaper article. It was discussed. I think the only reason it was brought in is because there was someone from Dundee was treating someone in the Olympics, something to do with doctors. On paper, you know, this is not really relevant to anything that was going on, but again, just encouraging discussion, making children aware that news happens in a newspaper, maybe those who are a bit younger, letting them know that these kind of stories exist, just keeping everything, you know, keeping them talking, keeping them discussing. Some children are going on holiday for the Easter holidays, so the nursery will be fairly empty, I believe, but they were encouraged to share where they were going. So I think one child is going away on a plane somewhere. That was as much as we could get out of them. But the way they were talking, like, I'm really excited, it's going to be sunny, it's going to be very warm, it's going to be hot, I'm going to have to remember to put my sun cream on, Daddy told me we're going in a big plane and it's going to be really high in the sky, things like that. And it's like, okay, great, I mean, you're sharing with us and we're listening. Talking and listening is a big part of the curriculum. Early starts, you know, start as quick as you can, I guess. After sort of circle time, I sat down and had a meeting with the deputy manager, just about something that I was kind of interested in after I made an observation in the circle time, where I think they were talking about Christmas, and I think one of the children being, I want to say Hindu, and I'm going to show my ignorance here, but they're talking about Holi. I think that's Hinduism. I don't think that's Islam. Could be wrong. I will not make assumptions. Well, that was brought up, and I just kind of sat down and spoke to her. I was like, so I kind of want to pick your brain here, just in terms of, if we're talking about the inner workings of the nursery and the culture and the, things like that, how are things like this approached? How are topics like this approached? She said that, well, the way that we look at it is we value all cultures the same. We're not a religious nursery. We're not trying to force any views, and the same goes for gender roles. We don't enforce any gender roles. We don't enforce religious roles. There is no right or wrong religion in our opinion, or in anyone's opinion of the members of staff. We just do what we do. And if the children want to discuss their individual religions, we will listen to them, we will take it on board, we will maybe investigate it further just to make other children aware. So I thought, brilliant. And then it dawned on me, I thought, well, what about at Christmas time? And she says, well, at Christmas time, we'll look at Santa, and we'll look at the Nativity, and we'll look at things like that. And I was like, well, so how do you really... I can imagine that it might be a wee bit difficult with some parents. Maybe they don't want their children knowing about that kind of stuff if they have their own religious beliefs, or if they have their own non-religious beliefs in many ways. So I said, how do you go around that? I was like, well, the way that we look at it, and this is something that I thought was really quite profound, if I'm going to be honest with you, because the way that we look at it, the children are in a Dundee nursery, and Halloween and Christmas and the Nativity are all part of our traditions. Now, they're traditions worldwide, so they're not exclusive to Dundee, but they are traditional within our community, within our local community. There are nativity plays. Within our local community, there is Santa. Within our local community, there's Halloween and we go trick-or-treating. So, if the child is in a Dundee nursery, they need to learn about the cultures of that nursery. I mean, it comes under the 4 capacities of the Curriculum for Excellence. A responsible citizen. You can't be a responsible citizen if you're not aware of the surroundings in your local area. I guess that's quite a loose thing. That was kind of something that I came up with. But it's kind of loosely based on, I guess. But I think that makes sense to me, and I thought that was brilliant. That was a really good way of dealing with it. I think they had a problem. One of the parents, had a problem with Halloween. I think they were like, that's a pagan holiday, we don't want our child celebrating it, sort of thing. And that's what they came back with. They said, well, look, that this is a local community. We don't want to exempt your child. Your child is interested in this topic. We want to continue teaching it, and we want to continue enjoying the atmosphere. At the end of the day, your child is just going to have some sweeties and dress up like a ghost. It's not a huge problem. It's the meaning is lost on the children, sort of thing. And I thought that was great. I thought, hats off to you. But on the flip side of that, this year during Christmas, they had a unique nativity, I want to say. They looked at every religion within the nursery, because there are Hindus in the nursery, there are, atheists in the nursery, I would believe, or just non-religious, I guess, I won't say specifically atheists. And there are Muslims in the nursery as well. So they looked at all the sort of origin stories and just they put on a big play. I'm really annoyed that I wasn't at the nursery at the time to see this, because I thought that would have been brilliant. They did the nativity, it was part of the play, but they also did like the sort of the Muslim story. I think maybe, I don't know if it was to do with Allah or to do with Muhammad maybe, and I can't even remember. We discussed this in depth. I took a lot of notes, but I can't remember the complete details of the play. But they incorporated all the religions into it, and I thought, hats off to you, that's brilliant. You've got a very culturally diverse nursery here. You're not enforcing any roles upon the children, and they're free to do whatever they want, which is great. Another issue that's sort of raised, though, when you're talking about equality is, gender equality. This story kind of, it made me cringe to an extent, and I realise this is a thing that I might have to deal with myself when I am a qualified teacher. But there's a game that they play, and it's called I think it's the Princess game. Now, they did it on a grand scale. They divided the nursery, and what happened was, they says, come and stand over here. This was completely children's own free choice, that's what I must stress. Come and stand over here if you want to be a brave knight. Come over here and stand if you want to be a beautiful princess. Now, that's all they said. That was it. I don't even think they said prince. I can't remember, did they say princess or did they say maiden? Something along those lines anyway. So that's what they said. Do you want to be a knight or do you want to be a princess? That was all. And of course, as you would maybe imagine, because this is just how life is, all the boys were like, oh, knight, swords, bravery, horses. Whew, they all wheeled along to one side. The girls were like, oh, princess, that's great. I've seen lots of films and stuff, and they all swept to the other side. They wanted to dress up in the dresses. They wanted to put the costumes on. The boys wanted to put the armour on. That was just how it was. Now, that was zero adult input. They said you have a choice. You can either be or you can either be. And all the boys went to be the knights, all the girls went to be princesses, and that was it. They played their game. The children went home. Everyone was happy. But a parent complained. A parent wrote in and said, "You're enforcing gender roles upon my child. I don't think that's very fair. If my daughter wanted to be a knight, she could be something along those lines." And the nursery were just completely dumbfounded. And they replied, they said, "We don't enforce gender roles. That's not something we do. We have boys running about in dresses all the time during dress up. We have girls playing with the tanks and playing with the cars and playing with the lorries and dressing up in the builders things. We don't care. That's not something we enforce. So whatever's happened is completely coincidental, and we have no control over that. Who are we to tell your daughter that she can't be a princess? She can't be, the damsel in distress if that's what she wants to be." So again, hats off to the nursery for dealing with it in that way, but I can't believe this is an issue in 2014. I can't believe parents are still sort of taking issue with this, but on the opposite end of the scale, if you understand. So, I mean, yeah, that was something I thought would be interesting in reporting on, as it might be something that I have to deal with in the future. Okay, that was a massive tangent now, wasn't it? Free play happened. During free play I read stories to the children again, just encouraging language development. I gave the child S, we'll call her, the book, and I let her tell me the stories based on what she thought of the pictures, and I was just kind of encouraging her to use bigger words. Just expanding her vocabulary. I went back to the deputy manager after this, and I kind of asked her for a little bit of assistance, just to plan my activity for tomorrow. Not so much assistance as just kind of run it by her, because it's her group that I'm taking. I said to her, "Look, I'm going to do this activity here, where basically I'm going to take the musical instruments out of the box." I know this isn't really related to the whole spring thing, but I found with the musical instruments have been out for the past couple of days, and a lot of that group are interested in them. So I thought, well, okay, it doesn't go into the overarching theme of the nursery, sorry, not the nursery, the spring and growing and planting, but it does in fact lie with the interests of the children. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them all out, and I'm going to sort of photograph all of them, print that off on a bit of paper, and stick it to the wall. And I will then hide all of the instruments. So what I'm going to do first of all, get them all to sit down next to me. I'll take them out and I'll say, "What's this instrument, what's this instrument?" and just see if they know what they are. So there'll be a guitar, there'll be a keyboard, there'll be a glockenspiel. I don't expect them to get any of these names. Maybe a guitar I could understand. There's maracas, there's salt shakers, and there's tambourines. Things like that. Just a couple of things, and I'm going to hide them throughout the nursery. So I will give the children the sheet. I'll just stick it up on the wall, and I'll say, "Go and see if you can find any of these instruments." So they'll go on their little scavenger hunt, and then they'll bring it back. That's all I really want them to do. The purpose of this activity is to, again, build their vocabulary. I want them to know about musical instruments. I want them to know the names, just so that they can have that knowledge for the future. And I want them to know what sounds they make. So once they find their instruments, this is how I will combat what happened the last time, where I kind of lost their interest fairly early on because they didn't really have a lot to do. Once they've got their instruments, they can play them. They can share them, they can play them, they can find out what noises they make, and I think that's going to be really useful as well. It lets them become better acquainted, so that if they ever hear in the background, they'll be like, "That's a guitar." That will impress their parents, and that will be really useful for them moving forward. Okie dokie. So after speaking about that to Anne, she says, "I've done a similar activity like that in the past, and they'll be okay doing that." During group time, we had our meeting. That was fine. The children usually just sit and watch a video while we do the meeting. It's only half an hour long. It just replaces morning group time. We have been asked to look out for child M, for an observation, because her folder's looking pretty bare, but at the same time the reason for this is she's only in 2 days a week. You don't really get a lot of time with her. Discussion of improving pictures. Okay, One of the practitioners says we want to promote the outside play and show the parents what we're really doing, so we're going to put some pictures up around the nursery of the outside play just to get them involved, sort of thing. So I thought, yep, very good idea. I discovered that during this meeting the planning happens. They pick 3 outcomes per week, and these can be either from the Curriculum for Excellence, the LTID, which I will explain in my folder, or in the Birth to 3 curriculum. So they will pick maybe one from each, I think is the way it works most of the time, so that they're hitting their sort of they're hitting their curricular areas as well as appealing to the interests of the children. I noticed that child K, this might be K2 depending if I've mentioned other K. This is a real nightmare trying to keep up with children's names when I can't use them. But she's struggling with literacy, so I decided to make a file on her just to kind of keep up. She attends speech therapy at the time, but as of just now, I think she's set to go to school next year, well, after the summer, but she can only count to 6, she can only recognise 0 and 1, and she has a very poor level of speech attainment at the time. So I kind of want to see how she progresses, see what activities are put in place, see if I can maybe put an activity or 2 in place to promote her language development. Continuing growing and planting into next week. Again, I won't be there next week most likely unless the nursery need me to be there, which I have obviously asked them, if you need me, you know how to contact me. There will be a in-service day upon the day of my arrival. Now, I discussed with the manager and I discussed with the deputy manager, what are you going to be doing? So basically what they're going to do is they're going to go and look at the new nursery building, discuss with the foreman what they want done, where they want their electric sockets, things like that, just purely designing this new building. And then when they come back, they're just going to update their children's files. So without any input from myself, I had just fully intended to go and that would be fine, but the nursery manager says, to be honest, there's really not a lot that you can be doing here. There will be no children, there will be no sort of managerial background things going on. All we're going to do is look at this building and then update our children's files, get on top of our paperwork. There's really not going to be anything for you to do. The best thing to do is maybe just stay off and update your own files. So at first I was kind of just a bit like, okay, we'll wait and see what happens, but after talking to the members of staff, they says, look, you will be better just staying off, because we are just going to be in here, heads buried in our folders, and then, we'll be looking at the building. There's really nothing for you to see, there's nothing that will be really of benefit to you. So I've agreed to, sort of take this as a day away from the nursery. So instead of chalking it up to an in-service wasted day, what I think I'm going to plan to do is have a massive day of just reflection. Now I'll make a video, it'll probably be an hour-long video, which this one is most likely approaching anytime soon, just of my placement so far, because that will be bang on the halfway point. So I'll reflect on all my experiences so far, and I will share with you my folder. I will flick through sort of page by page the folder so that you can have a general idea of what's going on. And again, this is useful for me. I can look back at this in the future and sort of see where I went well, where I went wrong. Again, that's what it's for, it's just a big reflection. During the meeting, I also discussed with the practitioners about the new members of staff. So what's happening is a lot of people are leaving and a lot of new staff are coming in. Not for any fault of the nursery, just new job opportunities have came up, and it's just unfortunate that it's all kind of came at the same time. So until they have a new what's the words I'm looking for? Completely lost myself. Until they have a new members of staff in, the green group are going completely staffless. So I stepped up to the mark. I thought, this is a great opportunity for me to study things a bit more. I said to them, I'll take the green group. It's only for a Thursday and a Friday, and it's the morning and afternoon, and that's assuming they're not doing any group activities. So I said to them, I'll take them for the time being until you can find a new member of staff. To this, they were really quite shocked. They were like, oh, are you sure? I mean, that would be really good. And then the deputy manager said, I've discussed this with you before, and if he'd be happy to do that, I'd be more than happy to let him do that. And then they all seemed really happy that I kind of, not humble, I know that sounds really, making myself sound like a right pillock, but they seemed really happy to let me do that, so that will be really good. There was a class consultation that happened after this. Nothing really major came from that. It was just to see what kind of things we could improve in the garden with garden play. Then went out to said garden and had outside play after lunch. And the group activities in the afternoon were really just growing and planting again. Children were planting outside in the front garden in tyres which are filled with compost. Great idea, love that idea. It means that the children are going to be able to set their own rules as well, and just, you know, to keep the plants preserved. So apologies for this extendedly long. I am absolutely shattered after recording this and very thirsty. But thank you for sticking through it. I know it was an extra long one. I could have cut it up. I probably should have cut it up, but I just really didn't. So I will see you tomorrow for tomorrow's reflection. I'll try and get back to doing these daily. I can't make any promises. I do have quite a lot to do out with this video series, but here's hoping. Okay, I'll see you then. Bye bye.